Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have the second half of my November wrap-up. Originally I recorded November wrap-up part 1 maybe a fortnight ago because I was having a rather good reading month. I'd read 6 books in the first week of November and I had great plans to read a non-fiction book, then a fiction book, and read about 20 books in total I'd got on this reading list. And then I came to the Alison Ware book and I didn't enjoy that. And then all of my dogs are going to be running around the house. I'm sorry, you're going to hear them. You're going to hear my neighbours as well. It's Sunday. So I read these books, wasn't really enjoying them, and so then, I don't know, I kind of just decided to do my own thing. I've read some of the books that I'd still got on this list, but I haven't got to them all, and I've kind of just cherry-picked the ones that I wanted. I had some books on there that I'd borrowed from the library, and I hadn't enjoyed them either, so they went back. And then I borrowed some others. But let's start this wrap-up. So, the 7th book that I read in November was The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan. This is the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series and follows a new cast of characters of Jason, Piper, and is he called Leo? Yeah. As they discover Camp Half-Blood, and Jason doesn't remember who he is, and I've said before, not really a big fan of Amnesiac storylines, but I was okay with it here because it's a new character, we don't know anything about him, it did add a bit of intrigue. I'm having a few issues with the second book because we do know the character, and I am not the biggest fan of that sort of book. I understand we're learning about new things, but to me, hopefully in the end it's all going to make sense, but currently, right now, I'm really not enjoying that aspect. However, these are middle grade books. I got this book at the library because I was looking at my own children's book, and it's been a few years since I really read children's fiction that's popular at the moment, and so I know that these were popular. I know that there's quite a few other series now, and this is rather old now, but, well, in terms of publishing, it's a rather old book. It's enjoyed by a lot of people. Some people, it's their favourite series, they reread them, and this book, I read the Percy Jackson series a few years ago, and I think that this book has surpassed that, and it was enjoyable for the most part. I thought that it was good to see the shift in perspective. I enjoyed the fact that it was written in third person. It still hasn't beaten the Kane Chronicles for me, and I feel like a lot of the time it's a lot of adventure and not a lot of plot, but I can understand why for the type of book we have here. It's a children's book. It makes perfect sense. So yeah, enjoyable enough. Didn't really teach me anything new about writing children's books, but I got something out of it, I suppose, and will probably continue the series just to see where it's going. Here's my tea. My tea's still too hot. Hopefully, I can figure out how to edit all these parts where the phone falls over, because now I have to film on my phone. You're currently being held up by 2 jigsaws because I couldn't actually fit an iPhone onto a tripod, so at least I get to sit down for all these videos. I might get to sit down for the entire month of November. Isn't that a nice idea? Anyway, the next book that I read was The Shepherd's Life by James Rebanks, or however you say it. Basically, this book came out about 2 years ago, I believe. It was a surprise hit of some year. Yes, it was the surprise hit of 2015, and this edition came out in 2016, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. This is actually my sister's book. I bought it for her last year after she read a book by someone who was on television on Vlogstars. Can't remember who, Emma Gray, I think. And this month, as I say, I wanted to read more non-fiction, and I know non-fiction November had a few themes and things that you're supposed to read, but I kind of veered away from them somewhat. I read Know Your Place because that was about working class families. I read Badgerlands because I wanted to know more about badgers and more about the cull and inform my opinions. And then I read The Shepherd's Life, and I read The Shepherd's Life for a few reasons. One, because What is his name? I do this every time. Every single time I do this. Ah. Well, I'll link him down below because I forget everybody's name and I'm very sorry about it. But he's a booktuber and I think his name's Steve. But it's not Steve Donahue. It's the other guy in Berlin. Ugh, I'm very sorry. Anyway, this is The Shepherd's Life and he read that. And basically, my father's a shepherd. Well, he's a sheep farmer, so I think that means he's a shepherd. And my younger brother's continuing in that vein. My older brother's just moved to Northumberland, and the eldest brother's doing something to do with sheep as well, I think. And so we have a history of sheep farming in our family, and it's something that I've kind of steered away from. Apparently, when I was a child, I was really enthralled by it, and like I can remember having a Land Rover toy. But eventually, I reached the point where I was just like, I don't like dirt. Now, I haven't like not stopped going up to the field and around lambing time, and I've been there a few times, but it hasn't been like the main focus of my attention like it has been for my family. And this book gave me a new respect for what my brother and my. So, I'm hoping to be able to add this on to the last video and to the same. Let's just hope editing works on YouTube. I don't know. This is frustrating as heck. But yes, this is The Shepherd's Life, and it gave me a new respect for what my family actually do. And it also, it was a different experience because I am a child who found books and steered clear from farming, but James Fairbanks found books, became very educated, and went back to it. And sometimes I question whether I would ever go back, whether I would actually begin to take part more in farming, but the interest isn't there for me, so it was different to see the perspectives of this gentleman who may have had a similar perspective to my brothers, and it kind of made me almost understand them. I'll never understand, like, why I decided not to. I know that I don't like dirt, and I don't really particularly care for sheep, but my father does. And I really think that this is a brilliant book. It is written fantastically. This is how like memoir should be written, and I thought that it was split up really well, and I will go back and I'll read it because it actually made me feel a bit smarter, because some of the stuff he was putting in brackets for like the layman I understood, and I was like, yeah, I've managed to get the commoner's idea of farming from here, as in like I have every man's knowledge of sheep farming at this point. So yes, it did touch on foot. It reminded me of foot and mouth disease, and I can remember the devastation of that from when I was younger. I think it happened when I was about 7 years old, and it talked about snow, which is a very difficult thing around sheep farming. But yes, very good book. It's a book that I wish to revisit, and I can understand why it's received the accolades that it has. Next, I read Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo, and this is a book that I wanted to read all year. It's a book that I like from when I was looking up the best books of this year that I was really looking forward to. And I didn't like it. Really didn't like it. Basically, it follows Yejide, or I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but it follows her, and she is unable to have children. And so her husband decides to take a second wife after being forced to by his family. And basically, it follows the subsequent tragedies that they go through and the pitfalls of their lives. And I didn't think that it was written well. I didn't think that there was enough story here to fill the 200 and something pages that it does do. I think that the whole title was based around something that doesn't really stick with the book for that long, but I can somewhat understand why the author chose that title or the publisher chose that title. But personally, I think that it isn't written well. The middle 200 pages could have been removed, and maybe it would have worked better as a novella or short story. But I don't think there was much character development, I don't think there was much story, and personally I think that this is a book that you could live without. The next book that I read was a reread for me, and that was The Professor's Daughter, which is the graphic novel by Joanne Svar and Emmanuel Gilbert. And I did not... Well, the first time that I read this book, I really enjoyed it. It reminded me of a Carry On film, and I thought that it was brilliant. I thought that the art was almost similar to this strange style that Johann Svar has in The Rabbi's Cat, which is by far one of my favourite graphic novels. But this time I just found that it was too fast-paced and that the story isn't really that much of a story. And I can remember when I was younger thinking that it didn't matter because it was so fast-paced, it was like a carry-on film, and it's just all of this very physical comedy, and I enjoyed it at the time. And I still think that it's an eccentric enough story, but if, say, it's moved down a bit in my estimations from the first time that I read it. I think I'll revisit in the future because it was nice enough, but yeah, I'd stick to The Rabbi's Cat. Or Dungeon, I've only read one of those, but I feel like that series was going places and people seem to really enjoy that. And next, I finally finished listening to Sorcery by Terry Pratchett on audiobook. And yeah, this is a book that I really did not enjoy and just couldn't get on with. And I'm finding that a lot with the Rincewind books is that I don't have the same connection to Rincewind. Like, I enjoyed him in The Colour of Magic and I enjoyed him in The Light Fantastic, but I kind of was like, well, there we go, we can end that there. And also, I really enjoyed Moore and I really enjoyed the character of Death, and I think that having had such a strong connection to Moore, anything after that really wasn't going to hit that same point. And I do want to read more of the books about Death, and someone did mention to me on... Well, it was actually on Lauren in the Books channel, so it could have been talking to her, but mentioned about Hogfather, and I've seen that I have the adaptation at work, so I might download that this month and listen to it for Christmas, so that should be fun. Just realised how dark it actually is in here, I'm sorry. And finally, I reread Stardust by Neil Gaiman, and basically, I wanted to have a few books to read to you. I'm just realising how short I've gone as well. Basically, I wanted to have some books to actually talk to you about in this wrap-up, so I did kind of power through a few on Thursday, and this is only 190-something pages, and it follows this character of Tristram, who tells a girl that he's quite in love with that he'll go and capture this falling star, and it turns out this falling star is actually in a humanoid type form, and she's also wanted by a witch because they can take out her heart and make her younger, and this other guy who is part of a family who the brothers keep killing each other in the hopes that one day one of them will be king, and it's basically been a fight to the death, but they want the star as well. And this time I actually enjoyed this book a lot more than I did originally. It has definitely been 10 years since I read this, because I think the movie came out 10 years ago and I got the movie edition at Christmas, and I ended up enjoying this book a lot more on the reread and thinking that I would definitely like to go back and reread this again and think it was a brilliant book to read at Christmas time. Like, I have been thinking about wanting to reread more books recently, and I'm really glad that I did this, because the star falling to earth, the way she'd broken her leg, and like even when it was fixed, she was walking with a limp, reminded me somewhat of The Little Mermaid. And there were, like, when he meets the hairy little man at the start, I can't remember what it reminded me of, but it had like tropes that I'd seen used in The Lord of the Rings almost turned on their head somewhat, and a lot of interesting ideas. This book definitely could have been longer, but I'm quite pleased with the brevity that Neil Gaiman employed within here, because it did fit more into the idea of it being a almost modern fairy tale, and I could probably read it again this month. But I know I know that I have plans for 2018 which involve a lot of rereading, so I might hold off for now. Anyway, them's the books. I never got to the reason that I didn't read more, but basically I ended up also rereading the children's book. So I reread the children's book about 6 times, which would actually amount to about 6 different books that I'd read. So I could actually say that I'd read a lot more than I have this month. But yes. I'm going to leave that there because this video keeps cutting out and I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to compile all of these clips into one video, and it's making me very annoyed right now. So yes, have you read any of these books? If you'd like to discuss them, please feel free to do so down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.